Good morning. Lovely to see everybody. My daughter and the little kiddos here and the older gentlemen, and we're going to continue to follow through our series. On Sundays we've been talking about Abraham, and we talked about weeks ago, a couple months ago, how there's a place called Hades, and there are two sides to it, and Abraham's on one side and the rich man goes to the other side. The Abraham side is the paradise, comfort. The rich man's side is fire and agony and thirst. And there's a big chasm in between the two. And we wanted to kind of continue to explore why Abraham has a side and why it's called Abraham's bosom. And what was it about Abraham what is about Abraham that we can learn as much as we can about him and his personality, because we are to become like him, because we want to be in his side of the Hades when we die. And we've been looking at Abraham for some weeks now and try to extract as much as we can about him. And I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about how God asks him to sacrifice his son. We talked about how that is some sort of a test to see whether Abraham loves and fears God more than he loves his own son. And we talked about how someday we may be tested similar ways, with whether we love our properties, whether we love our families, whether we love our own lives. I think a session later we talked about how Isaac, his son, also is a person of faith, that when he is 40 years old, his father wants to get a wife for him. He sends his servant, not himself. Abraham doesn't go and choose the wife. He trusts God. He trusts the angel. He trusts this chosen man who fears God to do the right thing, because he has also influenced him toward the faith. He goes and gets a wife, and Isaac marries Rebekah, and you can see that Lord was with Isaac and prospers him, and he prospers tremendously, that he's told to go away from the other people. People ask him to go away because the Lord is with you and you're prospering so far, so much. And Isaac takes off, and when he's 60 years old, he has two children, two sons. They're twins, and one of which is Esau, and one of which is Jacob. So Jacob and Esau are born to Isaac when he's 6 years old. And apparently Esau makes it split second, goes out of the womb tiny little earlier, and he becomes the firstborn. We know it later on what a firstborn it is in the Mosaic covenant. Apparently the firstborn would receive twice the inheritance. I don't know if you knew that. So if there were, like, let's say Shay, in your case, there were three sons, Shay will inherit 1/4 of your parents' inheritance, and you guys will get 1/4 each, since there are three of you. So it was a double portion in a way. So by split second, Esau gets the firstborn. I'm going to tell a lot of these stories because my points are going to be there are going to be 2 points. There are going to be two main subjects I'm going to cover in the next minutes. They're going to be centered on two main subjects. One subject is men of God, or people of God, or people of faith, are focused on their future rewards. They're not anchored to the now and here. And you're going to see that in Jacob, in multiple stories. Men of God, people of faith, sons of Abraham are focused on the future rewards, and they'll look forward to that long-term reward from God, right? We're going to see that in Jacob's life. We saw that in Abraham's life. Clearly, he wasn't content with the cities. He was looking for an eternal home architect, builder, and the foundation were built by God. He wasn't looking for an earthly. So the men of God are focused on the future rewards. That's the first point. That's going to be first subject, first concept we're going to look into as we travel through Jacob's life. And the second one is that also men of God's life is full of struggles. Full of struggles. Full of struggles. God may and will put you through a lot of things. And you're going to see that very clearly in Jacob's life in the next minutes as we travel with him. For some reason, it just became clear to me that Abraham takes up his story starts in Genesis chapter 12 and ends around 25. He dies around 25. That's about 13 chapters. Jacob's story starts in Genesis 26 and does not end until 51. 50. Genesis 50. So entire almost half of Genesis is dedicated to Jacob, parts of it to other characters like his sons, or including Joseph. But it's surprising that Jacob takes such a big chunk of the Genesis, almost half of the book. 26 to 50 is almost 25 chapters, right? First 25 chapters, and the 26 to 50 is almost the other half. And his story is so extended, just like Abraham, perhaps even more extended. I mean, I don't know how to even size it up, but just somehow there's just so much about him. And I don't want to actually, we dwelled on it some time ago about him going to, from his father's house to Haran to pick up a wife some time ago. And then he sees angels. There's a ladder to the heavens, and the gate of heaven where angels camp. You guys remember? There was a story about it. There was a session about it. So again, 2 points. I'm going to summarize it. They're going to be circled. Man of God is looking forward to his future rewards. He's not concerned so much for the here and now. And man of God's life is going to be full of struggles. God will make us through quite a bit. So don't lose heart when they're happening. A lot of the people who do not know God and his ways will get disheartened and say, why is this happening to me if God is there? Why is this happening to me if I've been walking with him? I'm telling you, man, I've been on this journey since 1988. I can tell you the struggles and the challenges. And you yourself, if you meditate on it, you will remember the struggles and the challenges that followed you. It is part of journey with God. But don't fret. You're in good hands. Angels are watching over you. Nothing unusual is happening. It is just the way God deals with his own children. So we're going to read here, and we're going to start in Genesis 25. Verse 19. These are the descendants of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took a wife, Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if this is thus, why do I live? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the elder shall serve the younger. When her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came forth red, all his body like hairy mantle, so they called his name Esau. Afterwards his brother came forth, and his hand had taken hold of Esau's heel, So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. Verse 27, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter and man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, and Rebekah loved Jacob. But once, when Jacob was boiling pottage, Esau came in from the field. He was famished. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red pottage, for I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom, which means, I think, red. Jacob said, first sell me your birthright. Esau said, I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said, swear to me first. For he swore to him, sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he ate and drank, and rose, and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So we know that the twins are born. There's a situation about this Esau selling his birthright to Jacob. We don't know exactly how old they were, unless you guys can tell me how old they were when this happened. But it's old enough that Jacob can cook and Esau can go out to hunting, right? When Esau comes from the hunting really hungry and desires what Jacob has, Jacob makes an offer. He says, sell me your birthright. And Esau does. Have you ever wondered, where was Jacob? Where was his mother, Rebekah? Where was Isaac at the time when Esau came back? Couldn't he grab something else to eat? What was Jacob like isolated somewhere? Jacob was among the tents, so clearly Esau could have gone to his mother or father and get something else to eat, but he wanted to have this food. And was he really dying? No. Was he really dying? He was talking like, man, I'm going to die. I'm so famished. Was he really dying? He wasn't dying. He was succumbed to his own belly. Here and now. People that are not of faith, people that are not regarding God, who is spirit, and the eternal life is about future, they're riveted to this earth. Here and now is what matters. The lentil soup matters now. And if they were, let's say, so Isaac was 60 years old when he had these children. Let's say they were 20. That means Isaac would have been 80 years old. Do you guys know how long Isaac lived? You don't have to suffer, but if you know, raise your hand. He lived until 180. They would not get this birthright business. They could not resolve this birthright business for another 100 years. But Jacob was he was looking for a reward that comes later. He wasn't looking for a reward now. Esau didn't care. Man, I'm going to get it 100 years from now. I'm going to wait for 100 years to enjoy my birthright. The Bible says he despised his birthright. It just meant nothing for him. It wasn't valuable to him because it was for so far away from the time that they were living at. Later on, into chapter 27, Rebekah tells Jacob to pretend to be Esau and go get his father's blessing. He puts some hairy goat clothing or something like that, and to get his father's blessing. And he gets it. Why was that so important to Jacob? Why did it matter that he got the blessing? And after he gets the blessing, how did it benefit him? Think about it. How did Jacob, with great risks, right? With great risk, approach his father, Isaac, to get his blessing? And what kind of blessing does he enjoy after he gets his blessing? If there's anything, the things that will follow, right? Esau gets really upset when he discovers it, and that Jacob is afraid that Esau is going to kill him. And his mother tells him to take off to Haran. And I don't know if you guys remember, Haran is about 600 miles north of where they're living, 1,000 kilometers away. Jacob takes off. He's afraid that Esau is going to kill him. And he moves to Haran. He stays there for 20 years. How is his life up there? So here he gets the blessing from Isaac. But how does that benefit him in the immediate period? He will get up there and deal with Laban. You guys remember Laban? Laban was Rebekah's brother. Jacob wants to have a wife. Laban, and Jacob says to Laban, I'll work for your younger daughter for 7 years for Rachel. But Laban tricks Jacob and gives Leah, the older one, and then another 7 years for Rachel. He's there for 20 years. How do you think his life was when he got up there? We're going to catch the story. We're going to be just covering some of these things. If you're interested, you can read it on your own. I'm just going to draw a couple of points out to show you what godliness or godly men look like. So when he's up there, when he's up there for 20 years, he's afraid of Laban. He decides that God tells him to go back to the land of Canaan. He takes his family secretly and starts traveling south. Laban hears about it, chases him with his men and his relatives or his family. And when he gets there, this is what Jacob says to him in chapter 31, verse 36.
What was the chapter?
Genesis 31, verse 36. Then Jacob became angry and upbraided Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? Although you have felt through all my goods, what have you found of all of your household goods? See it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. This 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your she-goats have not miscarried. I have not eaten the rams of your flocks, that which was torn by wild beasts. I did not bring it to you. I bore the loss of it myself. Of my hand you required it. Whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was by day, the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. Was it a cake the last 20 years? And some of you are employers. Somebody's coming up to you and say, man, for 20 years I worked for you. You have been terrible. You changed my wages 10 times. When I had a loss, there was a loss. You made me responsible. I bore the loss. You made me sleep in the fields at nights, and in the heat, I was scorched. And now you're chasing me? You tricked me with your daughters? You made me work for you? So he gets the blessing from his father Isaac. And this is his 20 years afterwards. This is his 20 years. If you were to go back to Jacob and say, would you done it again? Would you have gotten your father's blessing at this kind of cost? I dare to say he would say yes. We're going to see that in a second. Because he's a man looking on the long haul. He's not looking at here and now. He's not riveted to this place. He's looking for his man of God who's looking for a reward in the future. So this is Genesis chapter 32, verse 22. So he leaves Laban. I'm going to continue the story before we read. He's planning to come back to Esau. He is terrified. 20 years have elapsed, but he's still terrified of Esau. He's afraid that Esau is going to kill him. 20 years have... So what he does is he groups his family and sends them ahead of him, with the hope that, like, if he tries to harm at least one group, the other group can get away. We're talking about his wife and children here. So he's really terrified. He sends everybody across this river, and then he has this incident with God, actually. Genesis 32:22. The same night, he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of Jabbok. And Jabbok is not Jordan, by the way. It's another river.
32:22.
He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and Jacob's thigh was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." He said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, Your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. And Israel means the one that wrestles with God. For ye have been striven with God and with man, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, "Tell me, I pray, your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "For I have seen God face to face, yet my life is preserved." The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his thigh. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the sinew of the hip, which is upon the hollow of the thigh, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh on the sinew of the hip. So Jacob, who traveled 20 years ago, 1,000 kilometers from his home in Canaan to Haran. You guys remember, did he have like 10 camels to climb up there? Did he take 10 camels? He did not. He did not even take a pillow. He was using a piece of rock. He was walking up 1,000 kilometers, 600 miles. You're going to say, why didn't he take an animal? This is a long journey. If you take an animal, now you have to perhaps feed the animal too. And give him water, which is a prime thing in this part of the world, because they were fighting over wells in the stories. So he was walking up there at 1,000 kilometers. He is now coming down 1,000 kilometers on foot. On foot. Because he has this incident, he is wrestling with God. Obviously, God cannot be seen. So it's probably Jesus. He's wrestling with Jesus. He says, give me a blessing. He will not let go, the Son of God, Jesus, without getting his blessing. He will get his blessing, but at a great cost. And what is the cost? He becomes handicapped. In this time in this part of the world, in this time, if you cannot walk, how do you walk if you're handicapped 1,000 miles? You can't. Life has become seriously challenging now. So he gets his blessing. But at what cost? At what cost does he get this blessing? From now on, he's going to be handicapped for the rest of his life in this time of the world, in this time in history. Let me ask you a question. Jacob, who's now Israel, one that wrestles God. If you knew that it's going to cost you this much, would you seek the blessing? Would you wrestle with God? I say yes. You would say yes. Man of God is looking for the things of the future. He's not concerned so much about the things of today. The world does. What do you think the people of the world do? They're concerned about the now and here. They don't care about the future. They don't care as much about the future. Eternal life, heaven, and the promises of God and the future promises, they don't value it. Just like Esau despised his birthright. They want to have the lentil soup now. And you and I have been there, and perhaps we're still there. But see and learn from Jacob. See and learn from Jacob, just as I do. It's an example for us. Here and now versus looking for your rewards in the future. First, he lost 20 years of his life by getting his father's blessing. Now he is permanently disabled by getting this blessing. At what cost? When is he going to see the blessing? In the next chapters, if you read Genesis, we're going to skip again. He has 11 sons, and we know at least one daughter, even though he has more daughters, but one of her name is given. Her name is Dinah. And Dinah basically gets taken advantage sexually by the people of Shechem.
So where are we going? 34.
We're just glossing over. We're not going to read at the moment.
Okay.
We're just glossing over. I'm just making my points. If you want to go back to the passages, just read through it. You will see that this is the central themes. I'm extracting 2 points. Man of God who's looking forward for his rewards in the future, and that God will or may get you through many troubles. And there's nothing unusual. It's not because God is not with you. So Jacob, in the next paragraphs, you're going to see that Jacob is going to have four sons. The oldest son is Reuben. You guys know what Reuben ends up doing? Children, do you know what Reuben ends up doing? Sleeps with one of Jacob's wives, which is abhorrible. His brother's mother. the second one and the third one, Simeon and Levi, and kill the entire population of Shechem, all the men. They take their swords out of their anger and desire for revenge for Leah, who was taken advantage sexually. They massacre Dinah, thank you, who was taken advantage. They slaughter the entire population of Shechem. The fourth one, Judah. These are the 1, 2, and 3, and 4. I'm just showing you how difficult Jacob is, what the life has been for Jacob. Can you imagine? You have to deal with a son who's sleeping with one of your wives, and the two other sons who are not afraid to take their sword and massacre a whole city or town of people. The fourth one, Judah, gets married to a Canaanite woman. He has two sons that are so wicked that the Bible says God put them to death. You're going to wonder, how did they become so wicked? And the Bible doesn't use this language actually that kind of casually. The two sons are put to death. Either the Canaanite woman that he married, Judah was a wicked woman and raised wicked children, or Judah was a wicked man and his children went after, or just were in restraint. I don't know how in the world this happens, and then Judah's daughter-in-law tricks Judah to sleep with her as a prostitute, presents to be a prostitute, and Tamar, and ends up pregnating. And that he will become the father to these children. And the whole world will know that this happens, because once the children are born, you can't hide it anymore. Who are these children? Oh, it's from Judah and Tamar, the daughter-in-law. Shameful. You can't even hide it anymore. It cannot be in the past, because now you have offsprings. And Jacob has to watch this. Jacob has to embrace these grandchildren, perhaps. Jacob has to look at Reuben in the eye. And after all these, the sons of Jacob, Israel, will hate their youngest one, Joseph. Initially, they want to either kill him because they hate him so much. They want to throw him to a well, and perhaps instead of killing him. And later on, they decide on selling him as a slave to Egypt. And then they lie to Jacob. They come back to Jacob and saying, I think a wild animal tore him to pieces. And Jacob now has to grieve for his son for the next several decades. What a blessing. What a blessing. He got the blessing, all right. Joseph goes to Egypt, goes through troubles, becomes a slave, gets in prison, eventually rise up to become the second in command in Egypt, as we know. Later on, there's a famine, and Jacob and his family is struggling in Israel, in Canaan. So they eventually move down to Egypt to survive. Discovers that Joseph is not dead. And at some point, Joseph introduces his father to the Pharaoh. So we're going to pick up here in Genesis 47, verse 7. Then Joseph, 47:7. Then Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days of the years of your life? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourning. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Then Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had commanded. So you approach an old man who's toward the end of his life. How is your life? And he summarizes in 2 words. He says in verse 9, Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. I looked at the word evil, some other words that some of the translators used, and also it seemed to be consistent with the word behind it. Few and painful have been the days of the years of my life, or few and troubled, and I heard the word troubled. I'm sorry, difficult you said? One of the translators used the word laborious, right? The guy like slave for 20 years. Wow. So here is Abraham, the father of faith, God's friend, and Isaac, and here comes Jacob. Wow. Have been laborious, difficult, troubled, painful, evil have been the days of my life. And look, and we're going to jump to 48. I'm going to start concluding our subject today. Let's go to 48, chapter 48. Now he's talking to Jacob. Talking to Joseph. Verse 15. And Jacob, he blessed Joseph and said, the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has led me all my life long to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Look at what he says about his life. The God before whom my fathers and Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has led me all my life, to this day. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads. You know what he's saying? Man, there has not been one day my father Abraham, my grandfather Abraham walked before God. My father Isaac walked before God. And who I walk before God. Walk before me and be blameless. God has been with me all the days and blessed me. He doesn't see any of the challenges that you see as a problem. He sees it as a blessing. That God was sovereign in every one of those situations. I'll read it again. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked. The God who has led me all my life long to this day. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil. Bless the lads. See the man of God that he was? He knew that all of his challenges and troubles and all the difficulties was in the sovereignty of the living God. And serve the purpose. Serve the purpose. Can I tell you exactly what the purposes are? Not at all. Not at all. Who is one of the greatest persons in the New Testament? Tell me. What's his name? Jesus, right? But out of his disciples, who is one of the most surfacey? Peter, Paul. Look what Paul says about him. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 1. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8. I don't want you to necessarily turn it, but you can look at it later. This is what he's saying. We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despair of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. Man, God can raise the dead. We were under this tremendous pressure and struggles to the point that we desired, like, man, can we just die? It's better just to die.
What was that?
This is 2 Corinthians
2 Corinthians
1:8. It says, but this happened that we may not rely on ourselves, but on God, who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us. It's a pattern. You want to walk with God? You want to walk before him and be blameless? Look for a reward in the future. Look for a reward in the future. You will get your blessing. God is blessing you. I look at my life. Man, I've gotten through some troubles. I had a job for 6 years I was miserable at. I did not want to go to job. I had a job for 6 years, five or 6 years. I remember I did not want to go to bed the night before because I knew I had to get up and go to work the next morning. I just could not bring myself. So I would delay to go to bed because I didn't want to fall asleep and get up in the morning to face this place. There was so much politics and it was such struggle for me. It created almost like I was depressed. And I couldn't move on. I could not move on to another job. I was stuck there for a while. Many other things. My son passed away. It wasn't easy. He didn't just come and gone in one day. It was a tremendous struggle. And perhaps other things that I've gone through and you are going through. You are going through that you don't even know. And you're going to say, is it always the lesson is for us not to rely on ourselves? It could be 1,001 reason why you're going through it. Paul can identify why he was going through it. God was creating dependent. They were becoming more dependent on God, which is a good thing. Right? Blessed are the poor in the spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. Poor people are dependent. They're beggars. Your reasons may be different. I don't know the reasons. I don't even know why God was letting Jacob go through the things that he was going through. But this is the way. It doesn't mean God is not with you. God is with you. His angels are watching over you. God himself is hovering over you every day. However, there are lessons. However, he wants children that are mature. They're mature. Not just infants, but strong, mighty children, sons. There are lessons. And I don't know all the lessons, but there's nothing wrong. There's nothing unusual. This is his way. So I'll conclude it with these thoughts. There are 2 lessons to learn. Number 1, men of God is looking for a reward in the future. Don't sell out. And I'm speaking to myself. Don't sell out for a lentil, a pot of lentil. Don't sell out what's valuable, what's precious for a lentil bowl of soup, a lentil soup, like Esau, who's riveted to this world. Here and now is what matters to me. What do I care about what happens 50 years from now? What happens 30 years from now? It doesn't matter. I want now. I'm famished now. I want this now. And I've been there. I know what he's talking about. That's 1. Number 2, we'll go through a lot of troubles. There's nothing unusual. There's nothing unusual. Don't lose heart. Keep on relying on God. Keep on praying to God. Keep on casting your anxiety, your troubles on him because he cares for you. Keep on weeping and crying out for help. Be the persistent widow knocking on his door for justice. This is just the way. This is his way.